okay, probably being up off of the ground, but mostly because children that age want to be where the action is. The action is where the ball is. This is part of the reason why they move in a cluster up and down the field. For those age groups, that's by and large okay. It's interesting that they do block group defending, and then we train it out of them and have to reteach block group defending when they get to be 16. And we want them to defend in a block around the ball. Okay? Maybe not all of them on top of the ball, but they already have that seed and we coach them out. So, at under 8, we're saying 4 side, no goalkeepers. And the reason that we're saying 4 side is because one of the milestones for that age group is the beginning of cooperative play with a playmate, with a friend. So now I'm getting to where I will intentionally play with my best friend. Okay? Perhaps we play together in other environments. So there's emotional trust built up that if I give you the toy, the ball, there's a chance I'll get it back. Now, he's on my under 18, he's one of my teammates, but we don't know each other all that well. So the emotional trust isn't there initially. So I'm less likely to give him the ball, because if I do, off he goes. Now I got to chase him down to get the ball back, even though he's on my same team, sort of a thing. But because they really under 8 begin in pairs to pass the ball back and forth, and then eventually as friendships, trust, emotional bonding occurs between the kids, I'll begin to pass to these other kids too, and they'll begin to pass back to me. Right? But it'll be, I'm passing to this one person. Not passing to this one person thinking, oh, he's making an off-the-ball run and then we'll find you next. Okay? Sort of a thing, third man running. Right? So we're beginning to get into pairs play. And if we're playing 4 side, it makes it relatively easy to get those combinations. We advocate a 2-2 formation, if you will, okay, at under 8. Knowing that most of the passes will be straight to the kid in front of me. Remember the kid up top? Okay? I might pass back, I might pass square. All of those possibilities are there. Okay? Pass forward, to pass straight back, to pass straight across. Okay? The ultimate at that age group is a diagonal pass. Okay? You can get them by the time they're 8 making some intentional with forethought and meaning diagonal passes. Kudos. Right? So this is part of the reason why we're looking at a 4 side at under 8. U10, 6 aside, which now includes the goalkeeper, 5 field players. Goalkeeper, 5 field players. Now we're getting into intentional small group play. That they will intentionally work in groups of 3s, sometimes 4s, around the ball, either on the attack or when defending. Right? At under 12, we're advocating 8 aside. A goalkeeper and 7 field players, because now we're getting into basically medium size, or for the age group, large group tactics. So this also follows our progression in teaching tactics, does it not? When you went through the D-license course, you learned there that we teach tactics in a progression. Individual tactics, group tactics, team tactics. And for the 11-a-side game, team tactics is 8-a-side on up to 11-a-side. Right? So you could say, theoretically, that 8-a-side at U12 is the beginning of teaching team tactics. But we know that in the immediate vicinity of the ball at under 12, they're going to play in groups of 3s, 4s, maybe 5s in the immediate vicinity of the ball and begin to interact in small group tactics. Okay? And the foundation of small group tactics is pairs tactics and individual tactics. Pairs tactics being the smallest of group tactical play. So there's some of the thoughts about the stair-step approach as to why we're advocating small-sided games for pre-teen players, and what is some of the build-up, to that. So that by the time we get to under 12, if we're playing on a relatively small field, 8-a-side, now you see what some of the possible formations are. There's a few more, but these are the 3 that we think are the ones that would build players the best and would be the best understood by a larger number of coaches. Because at under 12, across the country, we still have a lot of relatively novice coaches working with the under 12s. So if I'm a dad coach or a mom coach, coaching a 3-3-1, 3 backs, 3 midfielders, and 1 forward, that's relatively easy for me and the kids to understand. It gives me automatically some triangles within the team. It gives me automatically width and depth on the attack. It automatically gives me the possibility of compactness and concentration on defense. And so the only thing it has is a real challenge in that one kid up top. Do I teach that one kid up top to always be kind of in the starting blocks, waiting for the big through ball? Or do I teach that and occasionally, son, girl, play with your back to goal? And then you have 3 midfielders that you can play combinations with, while you're playing with your back to goal, if we want to get to a more sophisticated level of the game. The hardest one for the kids and the coaches to understand is a 2-3-2, because it requires the most transition, particularly from the 2 outside midfielders, to know when do we go forward, when do we come back. But if we do that right, we could theoretically have, on defense, a 3-1-2, a 3-2-1, something like that. If my outside midfielders drop back, on the offense, on the attack, we can have people go up and beat numbers up on the attack. Okay? So the idea being that the 8-a-side environment enhances their soccer playing ability so that they can begin to play the game of soccer rather than play at the game of soccer. Well, here's what I mean by that. They could begin to play the game of soccer because now they're making tactical decisions. They're improving their ability to read the game. They're improving their ability to become what we mean to develop in our soccer culture, which are anticipation players. Right now, the majority of the players that we have are reaction players. They react to what just happened, rather than being able to read the game well enough to figure out what's going to happen next, before it occurs. It's like that good chess player who can read the moves 1 or 2 moves ahead. A good soccer player can anticipate what's going to happen in the next move, sometimes 2 moves in the game. And it's only when you get to where you're an anticipation player that you begin to make the right types of passes into space, not just to a teammate's body, but into space for somebody to run onto, because you can anticipate that the ball and the teammate can arrive there at the same time. It's only when you become an anticipation player that you're reading that off-the-ball run to get into that space to meet the ball at the same time. Because you know that your teammate who has the ball is seeing the game the same way, and we can time it to where I make my run, you make your pass, so me and the ball meet there at the same time. It's only an anticipation player when we're defending that can read when to step in front of a receiver to intercept a pass, instead of just waiting for the opponent to receive the ball, turn, and then deal with him or her, okay, which is what we're doing right now most of the time when we defend. Okay? So one of the things that we want to evolve is that ability to be an anticipation player, to be a thinking player, who can be ahead in the game mentally and then be ready to be a half a step to a full step ahead of the game physically, to have that kind of an impact. Well, that's very hard to do if I'm playing on at under 12, a field that's too big, because now for most under 12s, physically in terms of strength, as well as their technique on the ball, particularly their ability to strike a ball over distance accurately, not just boot the ball downfield, but to actually accurately hit a long pass. They're physiologically and technically not there just yet. Just yet. It's close. It's coming soon. It's not just there. So if we make the field smaller, it expands their tactics, because it makes it more likely that we can do group play by moving up and back on the field together. When the field's too big, the team gets stretched out. One of the things that I know Jeff and I were talking about is a very good presentation that Jacob Daniel, who's the technical director for Georgia Soccer, has done a few times, and it's all about playing through the lines of the team. The lines of the team being the defensive line, midfield line, forward line. And now one of the things that we don't do and the top 5 soccer nations in the world do is they play through the lines of the team. Spain, Brazil, Argentina, Germany, Italy, okay, play predominantly through the lines of the team. Right? We, at under 12, can't play through the lines of the team. The field's so big that those lines within the team get these big gaps in between them, because we have so much yardage to cover. Right? that we wind up eventually getting fatigued and we can't stay compact as a team, moving up and down the field together. Because if the field's too big at this age, we wind up on the attack, hitting these long, deep balls to try to get behind the other team's defense with our pass for forwards to run onto. Well, now the ball is so far downfield that if our forwards don't get to it first, the other team gets to it first, what usually occurs next? What do they do next? They boot it back the other way. So our forwards have just made this big long run downfield to get the ball and are now expected to make this big long run to get back. Well, I'm a fullback. I've stayed back here. I don't go to support my forwards or my midfielders because I know in the back of my mind there's going to be a turnover and it's just going to be this big ball back down here, and all I wind up doing is wind sprints. So we don't get compactness from either end, from defenders coming up to support midfielders and forwards, and when we're defending, from forwards and maybe midfielders coming back to support fullbacks, defenders. Right? So we wind up with these big gaps in between the lines of the team, which makes it almost impossible for us to connect with each other. When we're defending, in terms of the distance of support for the second defender to the first defender, when we're attacking, the distance and angle for passes that are realistic, okay, for the age. And so we get these big gaps between the lines of the team, and that's where the ball drops all the time for the counterattack. And then as a high school coach, you spend a season trying to clean all of that up, right? Because that's how your team's always getting beat. That's the high school coach or the under 16 coach, because the other team's dropping balls into the gaps between the lines in your team. And that's where the counterattack occurs and where you get usually devastated, right? So if we keep it a little bit smaller in terms of length and width, the kids both technically and physically are more able to stay together and therefore tactically to stay connected to each other. Now we have enhanced group tactics and group play around the vicinity of the ball, whether we're attacking or defending.